We're live.
All right, the Senate Education Committee on tax day, April 15th. We're going to start the afternoon as we have tended to do the last week or so. We're going to be jumping around a lot today, but we'll start a little bit of testimony on page 930 and act relating to addressing and preventing chronic absenteeism in schools, obviously. And have Ms. Farmer, the director of student engagement and data at Montpelier Roxbury Public Schools. So I guess you're supposed to say your name for the record, technically.
For the record, Nick Connor. Thank you, Chair Bongards and committee members for having me here today to discuss H 930. My background, as you mentioned, I'm the director of student engagement and data for Montpelier Roxbury Public School. I also serve as a senior fellow with Attendance Works, which is a national nonprofit that really addresses chronic absenteeism through policy and professional development across the country. Not here in my capacity as Attendance Works, also as a resident of Royalton and someone who gets to work in school districts across Vermont, talking about chronic absenteeism. I wanted to comment and share with you all a little bit about my thoughts on the bill, and I've provided a written testimony. And instead of just kind of reading word for word the testimony, I thought I would share kind of a small story about why it is I feel the way I feel about the bill, and get to the 3 points that I would recommend the committee take a look at. And when I started in Montpelier Roxbury Public Schools, I was coming from Denver and had been a director of a dropout recovery program, working in 20 school districts, so Denver Public Schools, Florida, and on, working with young people who had left school early. So Denver Public Schools would have 2,000 students drop out of school every single year. We got the chance to work with these young people and hear their stories and their journeys. And when I came to Montpelier, I was in a position that was called community liaison. Nobody knew what that meant. I didn't know what that meant. And one thing I did know is I was in charge of attendance for our district. And so we're in about October, November, and there was a student who had missed a number of days. It was a first grader who had missed a number of days. And I got the call from the school and they said, Nick, you're up. We have this kid who's missed a lot of school. They come in late all the time. Mom has this look on her face every time she comes in, and this kid has an IEP and they're missing services. And so you know what to do. And so I knew what to do. I pulled out the flow chart that somebody handed me. And I was like, cool, I got to give a call. I got to send a letter. And then if they keep missing school, I've got to reach out to DCF and the state's attorney. And so what ended up happening is I reached out to the student's mom several times and never got an answer. And eventually I went to the house, just do a home visit. And it was a big apartment complex, one of those ones you had like buzz in on, room 330. And so I buzz and this head comes out the window 3 floors up and they're like, who are you? I'm like, hey, I'm Nick from the schools and I was here to talk about attendance. She goes, I just put the baby down to sleep. Can't come down, I'll call you later. Wow, okay. So I would wait in the main office for several days, hoping this mom would come in late with her student. As it had been reported to me, they come in late all the time, and it's getting later and later, and this family doesn't really seem to care that much about education. And so I was starting to get this mentality too, and had started to reach out to DCF because we're talking educational neglect at this point. And I call mom again, and she picks up, and I don't know why I said this. I said, can I walk to school with you? She said I could use the help. I had no idea what that meant. So I show up the next morning. It's a cold November morning, and out comes Sarah, who we're calling Sarah in this moment. Comes running out, ready to go to school, pumped. Oh, it's going to be great. Good to go. Behind Sarah is a little sibling, not yet in school, comes sprinting. I was like, who's this? That's my brother. He's going to come with us. Great. Awesome. Behind little brother came another little sibling. One of those backpacks with like a leash, and mom is holding that leash and pushing a stroller. She goes, all right, let's go. Okay, I'm going to tell mom all the things that are super important about school. I'm going to let her know why it's so important that Sarah's coming to school. And I'm going to let her know if it doesn't change, what has to happen. That's my job. I'm a truancy officer. We walked to school. It's everything I could do to keep these young people going in the same direction, running out on the road, chasing a squirrel that may have been over at the bird feeder. And we get to school, and I'm thinking the school's probably going to throw me a parade because I got this family here, and the students here are just going to be in school, and I was exhausted, and it's 8 o'clock. And we go into the front office, and our front office staff, who are amazing, look at me, they look at the clock, and they say, why are you late this time? And I was devastated. He's like, do you realize the Herculean effort that we just moved through to get this student to school? This is a mom who is a single mom, has 4 kids under the age of 7, and just walked just under a mile to get her kids to school. And this really pushed me in a new direction in my understanding of how we approach attendance, and which is what brings me to this bill. When we talk about chronic absenteeism, and to be clear, I am fully supportive of the intent of H 930. This is a very important step forward in how we work with our families and students across our state. There are a few specific points that I would like to lift up. The first being removing, I would ask that there's a consideration of removing what is labeled as excused and unexcused from legislation. The reason I'm asking for that to be removed is this can become a very long list, and there will be advocacy groups that come and talk to you about, you need to add this, you need to add this, this is worthy, this is worthy. And before we know it, we've got a list of 37 reasons that are deemed worthy to miss school. What we have seen time and again is the reason young people are missing school is not because they don't care, it's not because it's not worthy, but there is one track that will lead to court, and there is one track that will lead to grace and make-up work. When we look at the bill as it's written now, we are codifying multiple reasons that leave, I believe there's 4 places for a superintendent or designee to have discretion as to if this is an okay absence or not. I have no problem with uniformity in the definitions of excused and unexcused. I actually think it's really important that we have this uniformity and predictability across our state. When we start to dictate subjectivity into deciding what is a good absence and what is a bad absence, we lose the point of chronic absenteeism, which is to say we care about lost instructional time. That young person that takes a vacation to Europe for 10 days, right now in this bill, a superintendent could say, this is a pre-planned absence for 10 days, and I will excuse it. The same young person, like Sarah, who misses school, is unexcused because that's not deemed a worthy cause, that mom is doing everything she can, and someday they just don't leave. When we codify this, we can't adapt the language in this bill. We can't be responsive to student needs. And we're actually building in more subjectivity to what is excused and unexcused, and prioritizing the fact that some absences are good and some absences are bad, when the reality is we care more about lost instructional time than trying to be a lie detector to say this was good, this was bad. To be clear, educational neglect is a thing. It is much less of a thing than we think. We still need to move forward with a process that responds to educational neglect. However, the way that this bill is written currently really moves us toward a place of punishment and subjectivity. I have been in a number of truancy hearings here in Vermont and throughout Colorado. Never once have I been in a truancy hearing with a family that wasn't living in poverty. There's something wrong there. If we are only criminalizing poverty as a response to absenteeism, our system needs work. Many schools don't have the opportunity to send someone to a house to walk a family to school to understand that journey and change how we do business. That's the first piece. The next piece I would say is the removing truancy officer from the language in the bill. I understand that truancy officer is written in a lot of legislation, and this is common language, but I think language shapes culture. And when we look at, if I show up to Sarah's house and I am the truancy officer, or if I show up to Sarah's house and I am the attendance engagement specialist, it's a really different approach. It's a really different mindset, and that family is going to receive me from a very different place. So when we talk about the truancy officer language, we are really enforcing this mentality of enforcement and schools acting as enforcers of compliance versus being partners to solve the barriers that young people and families are facing. The last piece I would outline here is we still have financial penalties in here for truancy. So if I think about Sarah's mom, and I think about Sarah's mom needing to go to court, needing to be put in front of a judge or a child in need of supervision, a CHINS case, just that language alone, child in need of supervision, you're going to take my kids. That's what we do when families don't come to school. Rather than try and listen and center their voices, if I think about the fact that we have $1,000 fine written into this bill, what a financial burden would mean to Sarah's mom, or to many of the other families that I get to work alongside, I think we have a real problem in how we're criminalizing and punishing poverty. So I would ask that this be reviewed in section 127. House Bill 930 is the turning point for Vermont. We have a lot of data to show this is a problem. 1 in 4 students in our state is chronically absent. And so when we think about these numbers, we have to now see the data, see the problem, but we need to have the courage and think about how we're going to respond to this issue. So I would ask that we move from criminalization to compassion and from enforcers to partners. With that, I will name that I appreciate all the work you all are doing. I'm glad to have a discussion that is about building maps. And I'm available if there's any questions or data follow-ups that I can provide.
Mr. Chance?
Yeah.
I mean, I find this all really compelling, and I know some counties and school districts have been working on this a long time, and it is true that it's kind of ripe for a big legislative sea change. Did you share your perspective with the House and they just didn't incorporate it, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And no, the first time I was with the House, I was there with the Vermont Superintendent's Association to respond to any questions about the topic.
Okay.
So really serving as kind of the answering about content.
Mhm.
The night prior to their vote of passing it out of the House, I finally was like, I really want to put my thoughts into this and give this. I think the House candidly was ready to move on from this bill.
Okay.
And I was late to the party.
Okay.
And so as I spent more time with this bill and really understood the pieces that I think are really important to address. So there was, in response to that, a lot of support that came from the House and a request to speak with the Senate as it comes to you all.
Okay. My only other question is it's a bigger lift to remove a penalty, right? It just, have you, I believe, for example, our state's attorney would support that. We were trying to move towards the data to show criminalizing or penalizing the family in any way it's not going to help anybody. If you talk to your state's attorney, do you think a majority of the system that would otherwise place this penalty on a parent is ready to move on from this penalty as well?
I have not explicitly spoken to our local state's attorney handling truancy, Chris Gazi, who is great. And every time I'm in the courtroom with Kristen, she's so family first and so very much responsive to the underlying factors. I have not seen that actually come out in ways that would threaten this fine or any piece.
Like they generally stop using it in a lot of
generally, yeah. And again, like how the language that we move forward with really shapes our response. I think chronic absenteeism is as much a philosophy as it is a system of response. It is how we partner with our families. It is how we move forward in solving this issue, because we will not punish our way out of 25% chronic absenteeism. We will not manage our way out of 25% chronic absenteeism. We need to think and shift our mindsets about how we support families when we
So do you have specific recommendations for they got the removing truancy elements? I get the removing from your perspective the notion of fines and going to court.
I would also add that I would ask that the removal of what is excused and unexcused comes out of this bill and is assigned to the Agency of Education or State Board of Education
To develop a policy.
to develop, yes, what they would define as what is excused and unexcused. I think if it's written in legislation, it's become stagnant, it's not adaptable.
But it'd be guidance from that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think the reasons that I see in the bill currently, it would be really hard for me to think that that is an appropriate way to move forward with how we decide what is good and what is bad. I think it will exacerbate inequities that we've seen. What the research would show from California and Maryland, but there was research recently done that shows young people with marginalized identities are getting unexcused tags way more often than their peers.
Can I ask one more thing about that? Which is, I mean, at some point to get us this far, I know that the task force in Chittenden County needed to collect the data about what were the excuses given, or they had to somehow characterize the absence.
Yes.
Do you and that could still happen through the Agency of Education, but you do think, I mean, is there some value to knowing, or categorizing the types of absences? And do you usually see it linked to, family and economic barriers to?
Yes, yes. I think we have to have excused and unexcused because educational neglect still exists I struggle with the fact that that is the threshold that we can, as schools, determine there's neglect happening. It is 20 unexcused days is what will tip it over into truancy. There's many states that say 3 unexcused days, 5 unexcused days. I would guess Vermont has one of the highest thresholds of unexcused days tipping into truancy than any state in the country. Many states are looking at 3, 5, and 10 days of unexcused absences. So as far as the qualifiers, yes, I do think they are necessary categories. And we as schools have a whole lot of work to do. When there is an unexcused absence, how does that teacher greet a kid when they walk back in the room? Do they roll their eyes and not provide the makeup work and catch that student up versus the kid that comes in with an excused absence because they were able to get to the doctor and provide a note? Who's able to get to the doctor and provide a note? There are some families that can, there are some families that very clearly cannot. And so this unexcused tag has this ripple effect. So yes, I do think those are important qualifiers. I do think there's a whole lot of work to do in the professional development world around really shaking off this mentality of one is good and one is bad. What we care about is lost instructional time. So when we have a long list of excused and unexcused absences, especially if they're written here, I see this having a disproportionate impact on young people that are socioeconomically disadvantaged, to people of color, in the same ways that we've seen it all along, in the same ways that the research shows it's happening.
Good testimony. In H 930, there's a section 4, which is completely repealed, which was a penalty for a truancy officer failing to retrieve.
Yes.
How do you feel about it?
I think it's great. I mean, I think, when I first took over one of the first things I did was read our attendance compulsory laws and saw that a truancy officer could be rolling around in their car and pick up a young person who is school age, they're not in school, and bring them to school. That feels prehistoric to me. And so I'm very pleased to see. And again, I am fully supportive of the intent of 930. I think this is a strong move in the right direction. And I think we can be better.
So not uncommon for jobs to have metrics for performance and success. And
Yes.
is there a replacement for this? What I think the section's trying to do, or was trying to do, or at least was in statute to do, was to incentivize truancy officers to get out, retrieve kids, students, bring them in. What other metric do you recommend in its place?
Absolutely. Chronic absenteeism as a metric is the metric. Chronic absenteeism, missing 10% of school for any reason, excused, unexcused, and out of school suspensions. That's 18 days over the course of 180 days school year. We're talking about missing the month of October. So our chronic absenteeism rate is one that I would say in our district, and it's starting to be more common. I know our chronic absenteeism rate every single day. I know what it changes every single day. So we're sitting at 18% in Montpelier Roxbury Public Schools. 4 years ago, we were at 32%. The state is at 25%. Prior to the pandemic nationally, we were at 15%. After the pandemic, we were at 30%. So nearly doubled after the pandemic. We have seen strong gains in Montpelier Roxbury Public Schools. I was also part of a project at UVM, which is called Everyday Counts, run by Dr. Heidi Schumacher, who's amazing. I would encourage testimony from her if there's an opportunity. We worked with 4 school districts of Franklin Northeast, St. Jay, Orange Southwest, and White River Valley. So we worked with these 4 school districts to provide professional development to their staff, talked about how we collect meaningful data, talked about how we do meaningful strategies, and really importantly, how we partner. So in each site, there was a diet, there was a community health center and the school that partnered in this work. The data that we've seen come out of this project, every single district has reduced their chronic absenteeism rate dramatically. So my metric would be chronic absenteeism. When Libby, my superintendent, comes to me and says, Nick, what's our chronic absence? That's my accountability. I need to be held accountable. If we are not seeing these numbers go down, what am I doing? If I don't have it at the tip of my tongue, what am I doing? And I think it's a much more meaningful number because we're talking about young people who are in school versus who are not in school, rather than focusing on it being good or bad. It's just that they're not here. So that's my metric there.
So for you, then thinking about chronic absenteeism is to apply it to the school, not the individual.
Oh yeah, it is a school and statewide metric. Yeah, there are 37 states in the country that have.
Not the.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are 37 states in the country that have chronic absenteeism as a metric in their ESSA plan.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, yes.
So, is there age that it seems to be more chronic than less?
Yeah, great question. What you will see if you think of like a bar chart, kindergarten over here for a second, all the way to 12th, it is a U. So kindergarten has incredibly high rates. It starts to dip down a bit in the middle school and peaks back up again in 12th grade. So 12th grade, obviously you've got your seniors, your students that are whatever you want to call it, senioritis, taking fewer classes. It's okay to miss a day here or there for college visits, etc. Kindergartners, you have the fact that it's not necessarily mandatory in the state of Vermont. You also have the fact that families still have this perception of it's kindergarten, we're good. And you also have young people building immune systems as well. So there's more days missed there. What the research shows very clearly is if you are chronically absent in kindergarten and first grade, the likelihood of you reading at grade level by the time you're in third grade is dramatically reduced. So it really is one of the earliest indicators of a young person struggling in school. So if you can see that rate.
So at that point, it's more parent than it is the child.
Yeah, it is absolutely a spectrum. And when I'm doing interventions or working with families, it's a very different conversation if I'm responding to a kindergartner versus a
That's all
11th grader.
Yeah, all the way up to maybe sixth grade, correct?
Yeah, there's certainly a tipping point in middle school when, when I'm doing a home visit or something and sitting at the dining room table, if it's the kid sitting there or the parent sitting there. So yeah, it does for sure.
And then is it basically just educating the parent? I'll give this for instance, my son-in-law's daughter. When they first had the baby and he had to get the baby ready and he was always getting to school a little late.
Mm-hmm.
And that eventually kicks in that,
Sure.
hey, even though it was like 15 minutes late.
Yeah.
Keeps all of a sudden.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like, wow, you're missing that first 15 minutes of school. So he had to end up getting better, just like,
Yeah.
We don't really want to do this, but it triggers it triggers a notice that you
Right.
have to get.
He may receive a letter, right?
Yeah.
What I would say is really valuable is really understanding what that journey is for him. So the example I gave about Sarah, right? That was a housing complex. It was a big unit. We had multiple young people living at that complex. All of them were chronically absent. They were just under a mile, which in our district meant you can't get a bus ride, right? Can't get a bus ride if you're less than a mile. But the bus stopped 2 blocks up and drove by this apartment complex. So we pulled the data after we had our walk to school. I pulled the data. We looked at who's in this building. The bus now stops there and it's not an issue, right? That was an effective intervention versus sending a letter to say, you're at this number, do better, right? And I think that's the philosophy of chronic absenteeism and why this is really important.
My sense is that, whether it's captured or not, they were actually trying to do, I think in the end, get to where you're going to go, but thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
And I think you've given us real food for thought, actually. So, yes, one more.
Oh, are you?
I'll go after.
We're late.
Okay.
But
Well, I think it's related to maps and mergers. Because I think there's a desire to free up more resources so a transportation system could work, right? Like even right now with cuts, we're hearing kids are getting picked up from previous bus routes. Do you think as we look at redistricting and reform, it would be helpful to have like a pot of money set aside where a school could say, we're trying to reduce our chronic absenteeism and what we need is a grant for this to happen?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'll be quick. The one example is at the high school level in Montpelier, there's no bus, right? But we have a incredible person, Leslie, who is our attendance support specialist at high school. She goes around with one of the district vans and picks up kids that may be living at the condo lodge, that may be living in various places, because we know what it takes for that kid to get to school, and we're just doing it. Like there is no like sign out there. It's no like, here's the like. It's like this young person needs a ride. Let's get them a ride. That's something we're funding on our own, right? And that stuff builds for sure.
one more.
No, I assume it's on the schedule again tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, I don't know, that is right outside, but saw her upper head.
I think I see Beth. Where do all our chairs go?
They stole
Who's they?
next
No,
door.
what next
They
door?
come got two.
From
Yes.
economic development.
What? Doesn't sound like those guys.
I think. I can go grab them.
So next, I think this is the walkthrough timeline. Of, I think it's so insane. Oh, we have copies here. Okay. Yeah, today we had the discussion about the timeline. And then there is one, we have it, so, today we have, St. James, City Council. We're walking through the timeline.
Thank you. Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. Do you need me to share my screen?
No, I don't think so, we have to have a copy.
So this is the timeline for Act 73. Like I mentioned, I think it was just yesterday or the day before that all blend together. Not everything that is contemplated happening in Act 73 is on this timeline. So just because I don't touch on something today doesn't mean it's not supposed to happen or etc. So if you have questions, please let me know. Many of these things, as you can tell by the dates, right? Like the first three bullets there, passage July 1, 2025, December 2025, those have already passed us. So we will walk through that, but just a note that some of these things have already happened. So on passage, Act 73, certain things happened, and these were related to effective dates. So the school district redistricting task force was created on passage. The school district voting board working group was created on passage, and updates to the charge of the Commission on the Future of Public Education were effective on passage. And then on July 1, 2025, the School Construction Advisory Board was effective. The changes that you made to Section 828, Title 16, regarding who is eligible to receive public tuition were effective on July 1, 2025. And the changes to who appoints members of the State Board of Education was effective on July 2025. And then in December 2025, there were various December dates. So it's just the whole month. You were supposed to get these reports. The school district task force report, standards are small by necessity and sparse by necessity from the state board, special ed and therapeutic schools report from AOE, statewide financial data student info systems report from AOE, school construction division report from AOE, consolidation guidance was supposed to be issued or drafted with I believe a copy provided to the legislature, transportation reimbursement recommendations from AOE, inflationary measures and pre-K report from JFO, and property tax classifications report from the Department of Tax.
Can you help us out a little bit and tell us which of these reports were extended, due dates were extended,
I don't believe any of these due dates are extended.
all by necessity?
Not the report for the recommendations from the state board.
Thank you.
So in the 2026 session, Act 73 stated that it was your intent to enact new school district boundaries, update
career and technical education, update pre-K, begin the process of creating voting wards. And I'm not sure what the reference to report on regional reappraisals do. It must be that there was some report to you all due in that time period that was separate than the intent. And then July 1, 2026, new school district boundaries were supposed to go into effect. Class size minimums do go into effect, and the school construction program goes into effect. And then July 1, 2027, statewide graduation.
So just to note, given our discussion yesterday, it actually was yesterday, although I haven't kept why it seems longer. This is when the class size minimum, which was July 1, 2027 on this timeline. That's it.
So for July 1, 2027, statewide graduation requirements, starting with the class of 2031, are envisioned to go into effect. I say envisioned because the directive at this point is for the AOE to develop those statewide graduation requirements with the goal of them becoming effective in July 1, or the standards are supposed to be developed by July 1, 2027, and they would start to take effect for the class of 2031. But there's nothing, you didn't change any statutes in Act 73 related to graduation requirements. And then there was an update to the December 1 letter in anticipation of the transition to foundation formula that would take effect on July 1, 2027. November 27, it was envisioned that initial school board member special election would be happening for new school districts. That was in your intent section. There was no statutory language that requires that. January 1, 2028, a statewide school calendar would go into effect. Additions of two new tax classifications for education property tax would go into effect. July 1, 28, new school districts were envisioned to be operational, which means they would be responsible for the education of all resident students. The foundation formula and tuition changes will go into effect if the conditions are met. That's what that asterisk represents. Statewide education tax and supplemental district spending tax would go into effect if the conditions will go into effect if conditions are met. Homestead exemption replaces the property tax credit if conditions or if contingencies are met. And statewide graduation requirement beginning for the 28-29 school year. So the July 1, 27 related to the statewide graduation requirements, I believe would be the recommendations for the AOE establishing those. And then on January 1, 2029, full municipal reappraisals changed to a regional system. So some of this is intent language, and some of this is going to take effect if you don't make any changes. If there's a contingency involved, then obviously the contingency would also have to be.
It's good review. I appreciate it.
Yes.
I was listening for this. Sorry if I missed it. Did we all agree somewhere on the foundation formula implementation staggering, or like
there's a transition mechanism that I can't speak to. I'm not familiar enough with it, but there is a transition mechanism.
I thought I didn't know if it was like 5 years of change.
I think it's 5 years.
I would like, yeah, I mean, we should know,
Yeah.
right? Because we don't, I think we lost track.
For clarification, is that the ramp up of some districts' taxes and the ramp down of some districts' taxes based over time?
Okay, thank you. Yes.
A question maybe, the statewide calendar, there's no other progress is going on there?
I was gonna ask you, is that by meeting? So we'll have to come to. So
Let me
we're
look at
fine.
Act 73.
Maybe that's AOE's charge, correct? So we should ask them to move forward on how they, that's just so we are in the know.
So statewide calendar requires on or before January 15th that the Secretary of Education shall develop and publish a statewide calendar. And on or before January 15, 2027, the secretary will also present to the education committees a list of the statutory amendments necessary to affect the intent of that subsection.
So it you did this year just to see how they're coming.
Yeah.
And then on the class sizes, we're gonna decide whether we're gonna extend or eliminate. So that they don't feel so much pressure. Okay.
So what we've talked about so far is that as you suggest those two things. And one of them would be to tie assessment rules to all the contingency in that. Or it's also some sense of another alternative. So. Okay. Pretty good. Done with. Thank you for coming in. Are you back today?
With you?
Yeah.
No.
That's today. No,
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 next time I'm in here is Friday.
Friday. Okay.
We're gonna miss you.
Yeah.
I will see you
How
then.
quickly she answered.
Okay, so we have the, on the agenda, it's picking it up from yesterday. The issues we have, the IRS, higher trust fund. We got two issues in front of us. If there's consensus, we'll do something. When we approach it, the not consensus, we'll still approach and figure out. So issue number one, thing, which is the, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, or the 25, 50. I have said what I think yesterday. Yeah, with consensus, we do something with it. If we don't, we won't.
I would go either 25, 25, 50. Fall back 25, 25, 25. But 50.
I agree with that statement.
Second or third.
I think I said yesterday that I don't think we should change it this year. I think if we're like inheriting the higher ed trust fund as a committee with policy jurisdiction, let's understand how it was formed and all the agreements that went into that and what's transpired since. It's not a large amount of money, so I could go either way from that perspective. But I just worry about each of those three, like the one decision, the status quo seems less tenuous to me right now than deciding between the 50 versus the 25, and like it just sort of a lot of process feelings for people that I don't think we're fully equipped to manage.
I mean, I'd be on board with hearing more testimony about it. That's good preference on.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think we're not fully in. I think it's more complicated than that person. So.
I don't think the appropriations committee is waiting for us regardless. It would be more of a question of, are we all informed for the floor or for the people?
So,
Yeah, I'm fine taking part testimony, and we should just understand it better.
okay. Then we have, we heard Senator Ruth here yesterday, with that proposal. So what's people's sense about that one? Again, I said what I think yesterday.
No change. I don't support Bill because you're saying they wanna, it's too quick. We don't have enough information. Don't want to change it.
This is.
I know it's a different thing, but
Yeah,
it,
excise tax.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Need more information.
I'm good to go. As described, as recommended by Senator Brewer. Let's get that project done. Okay.
Well, it's fine. Yeah.
Still enough.
Yeah, so let's split.
Before where we where we were, I think from like a week ago, was people agreed about the importance of the project. But we're concerned about it coming out of the higher trust fund. And then we heard. But I couldn't tell if Senator Humphrey, your concern was that if you want to know more about the higher ed trust fund, so that we don't take the money out of the trust fund all in 1 year. Because now we're putting it back. So, I mean, that's an even.
So what would be necessary to
Yeah,
illustrate
exactly.
the financial point? Would you like to see? This is for you, Steve. The fund increase, and then you have this big time donation, then you have this $12 million carve out, and then you have the 5-year escalation back, the taxes going back in. Is that the kind of?
Yeah, a little bit more clarification and understanding on my point.
Like how quickly it would actually get repaid.
Yeah, you just,
Well,
you know, you've been embedded in this for a while, so you totally understand it.
Not actually, I don't,
Yeah.
it's new to me, so.
I think the implications of opening it up to capital projects, should also be looked at. You know, we're opening it up to the 12 million, but also the 600,000 for housing. So, and I mean, there's no crystal ball, but presumably every other higher education campus is going to want some money to improve a building or build a new building. And so how will that go against the funds that exist and the fund that we may be getting, the excise tax? So there's a number of factors to look at.
Okay, my attitude coming in today was if we have a real quick consensus, we have a good consensus. If we don't, we don't, and that's fine. I think so. And we can. I think take some more testimony than one third in our arms around that way. Okay. Do we have? Call to the room. Yeah. It's not till 2:30. If not, we'll take a quick break. Quick break.